Phil, you're gonna switch on? Switch on.
Phil, switch on.
Okay, somebody during the break asked a couple things, so we'll start with those. I've said a few times that I guess antithesis maybe, it's not opposite exactly, but the other thing that obstructs agape is not hate, as that's kind of the opposite thinking, isn't it? There's love and there's hate. They're not the two things that are in juxtaposition. It's fear. That there's a long range of experiences that one can have that goes from fear all the way up to agape. And for a long time, when you get out of this being fear, what it looks like more than anything else is confidence. That it doesn't look like what we would call love until you get way past confidence. So there's a kind of thing that we might notice for a while in the experiencing of this range of experiences that we might not even call love. It is, but it looks like something that you'd call confidence. And somebody said, that don't make sense to me. So here we go. I suspect that it doesn't make sense because we're not getting that there are two different forms that love can take. There's personal love and there's impersonal love. And the personal love looks very different than impersonal love does. Now, what's personal love? That's that stuff. It's really about taste, isn't it? It's what can be called approval. And it's about me and you, isn't it? I either find you to the taste or I don't. Even what we call romantic love is still very personal, isn't it? When I'm experiencing romantic love for you, that's kind of what I'm saying is you're so much to the taste, right? Very, very personal. And it's kind of all about a bunch of feeling stuff, isn't it? Putting that value on my own taste and making it a big deal generates a lot of feelings, and they're sort of fun, aren't they? So we think that's what love is that feeling. Without kind of looking past it and seeing that it's all about me saying, I find you so much to the taste that I want to be with you a lot. Okay? But unfortunately, that's also conditional, isn't it? Because if I am with you a lot, what is one of the things that I quite quickly discover? You're only sometimes to the taste, aren't you? And there's a little bit more to you than what I thought. You're not quite that little stick figure that I expected. Not necessarily wanted. It's funny, but I'm not necessarily saying that therefore you want to get out as fast. It depends, doesn't it? you can deal with the fact, but it's still conditional. Even if you deal with it and it's okay and all that stuff, it's still conditional. So the love comes and goes depending on whether what you're doing is to the taste right now, doesn't it? And I think that's why we're not seeing that maybe the love that we talk about, which is impersonal love, has a lot to do with confidence. Okay, because we're used to this other kind of love that's very much tied up in the feelings, because it's about valuing what pleases me, really. That's what to the taste means, doesn't it? This pleases me. So I'm not trying to get into all the unpleasant aspects of that. This can be very pleasant when it's understood. And I don't see anything wrong at all in finding someone that pleases and that you can please and doing it. It's a lot of fun. Knowing that there are going to be times when you don't please me at all, and other times when I don't please you at all, and without the expectation that it be 100% constant, it works out pretty well. Okay? Do you two mind if I share that funny thing you told me about arguing? I just got such a kick out of this. We were talking during one of the evenings about how people seem to feel that if you won't fight with them, you don't love them. Have you noticed that? When you get into a relationship, it is an utter and absolute requirement that you have a fight every now and again to prove you love them. And if you won't do that, you don't love them, which I find a little bizarre. So I asked a couple that was sitting there, do you fight? And they said, oh yeah, which is what I expected. And then they said something totally unexpected. And they said, but never at the same time. And I was sort of sitting there thinking, what the hell does that mean? And they said, what happens is that when one of us finds the other one, I suspect this is what they meant. I'm adding some words here, and I want to embarrass them by making them explain it. But when one of us finds the other one not to the taste, we sort of figure that we have something to deal with, and we're really pissed off and all upset, and we sit there and work with the illusion of it, and then forget all about it, and then the other one gets upset because they're not to the taste, and they sit and do that, so it never turns into anything out here. But apparently they both know about it, so a few days later they'll go to the other one and say, okay, it's over with now, even though it never got expressed. I thought that was a hoot. So, yes, we fight, but not at the same time is the answer, and that makes sense, doesn't it? So apparently, if one does kind of get this idea that personal love is conditional and is about taste, and is willing to work with it instead of, I've never met anybody else who's willing to do that with me. I've always kind of done that myself. I figure that's my job to take care of these things. I don't need to even tell you about it, really. But I never met anybody who would go along with it. So it's kind of interesting to see that if two people are willing to play that game, they don't ever actually have to have the fight and prove they love each other. Isn't that a hoop? It's kind of good news to me. I've wondered about that for a long time. But I think that's why we're having those who asked the question. The difficulty with this is what we know, is this personal love. It says, I will love you as long as you please me. And when you're not pleasing me, it's very hard for me to still give you the approval. I don't see any value in you not pleasing me, which can be worked without it turning into anything ugly at all. Okay? And like I said, that's been demonstrated now. It's not a theory. But there is another kind of love that is impersonal. It is not about you. I can have I in a generic sense, not me personally, okay, can have a love without it being about the other person. That's what I mean by impersonal, okay? And that is the love that X has for the awareness function. And the nice thing about that is that you can do just about anything. And that love will never be taken away. Because you don't have to please the one that's doing the loving when it's not personal. It's just being given. And it just doesn't have all those lovely chemical things that go along with it. So you don't have the kind of feelings that you can revel in that are really, 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 really pleasant, that make the personal love so much enjoyable while it's there, because you get to revel in all those little chemical feelings that happen. It just doesn't seem to have that in these bodies. It doesn't generate those kind of feelings. There are feelings that go along with it, but they're not as outrageously, powerfully pleasurable, okay, as the ones that are associated with things being to the taste. Because that's kind of what being to the taste means, isn't it? Is that I experience a whole bunch of pleasant sensations when things are to the taste, and that's what I care about. That's what that means, huh? So when we get into this, let's kind of look at that for a second. To be able to extend that understanding and consideration for another under any and all conditions, no matter what they do, no matter how much something they do hurts you personally for a moment. What does that take? Doesn't that take a tremendous inner confidence that I can handle and deal with any situation? Could I do it any other way with anything else but confidence? It's a part of it, isn't it? I can't do that if I'm afraid. If we'll take what for me anyway might be a drastic situation. Maybe you don't care about it, but let's say I find out that you've been sleeping with somebody else. Now, maybe that don't hurt you, but that sort of hurts me a little bit. I think that's not that uncommon. I can talk about that, huh? Where is it going to come from in me to still love you under this condition? Doesn't that have to come from a lot of confidence in me? I can deal with this. I don't have to go through a bunch of stuff telling you how wrong you are and how bad you are and how much you hurt me and how much you now owe me and all this sort of stuff. To find a way to understand what just happened is going to kind of take some confidence on my part, isn't it? to go through my own hurt over it, initial reaction of being hurt by it, and get to a place of understanding. That is going to take some confidence on my part, isn't it? If there's any fear in there, insecurities and all that sort of stuff, we are going to have one heck of a scene, aren't we? And if I'm too afraid, I probably will have to leave because I can't handle the fear that you might do it again. I've heard that one a lot, you know. But now I can't trust you. And I just can't be in a relationship where I'm afraid you'll do it to me again. And that takes a lot of confidence, doesn't it? And the odd thing is that it's really actually not that hard to understand if you want to. All you have to do is look at your own self. And we all know that sometimes when it comes to human relationships on this sexual, romantic level, things just happen, don't they? That are, nobody planned them, nobody expected them, that no matter how much two people love together, sometimes you just, one of them runs into somebody and it kind of gets out of hand, doesn't it? Those feelings and emotions are pretty powerful, and you can kind of understand it. It's like, okay, that happened. If it's over with now, great. It doesn't really have to affect our relationship, assuming that it did end, and you don't want to go running off with them instead. You get what I mean? It really is understandable, isn't it? Those feelings are outrageously powerful, aren't they? And I don't have to be threatened by it if I don't want to. But that requires a tremendous confidence, doesn't it? To not be threatened by that. The understanding part, if you have the confidence to look at it, is not that hard. I know from my own experience precisely how powerful those things are. And I know what it takes to resist them when you're in a relationship already. And it's rough. If you happen to get into a situation like that yourself, where you're in a relationship and you meet somebody where those feelings come up again, it's rough resisting them. Not exactly an easy job, is it? But somehow it's just expected of us all that we be capable of that job if you really love me. Well, some of us fall down on the job. That's life. So the understanding part is not hard, but having the confidence in oneself to say, this is okay. That's kind of what it takes, doesn't it, to make that okay? Or utter indifference, of course. If our relationship has gotten to that point, I guess we can do it that way. But that's where we get into impersonal love, agape. Looks more like confidence than anything else for quite a period of time. On occasion, you'll actually see it expressed in a way where it very much looks like an act of love. Much of the time, what you see in a person who is working towards a state where they can have understanding at all times for what others are doing is a tremendous inner confidence. That's what you see expressed by that person. You don't see them too often get in a position necessarily. It might be happening all the time where the expression is the willingness to love even when it's quite not to the taste, okay? So you may not see very much of that part of it. You're just not around when it happens. But agape is not that outward gushing of approval, although that's there too. That is a part of love. Does that kind of answer the question? It takes tremendous confidence to love. It's just really all there is to it. So when fear sort of starts switching over into interest, which is still personal, along with it comes a confidence to deal with things. Now, one of the things that a person can do if they're used to living in various states of fear is to try confidence on, like a suit of clothes. Go buy a suit of confidence and wear it for a while and see if it fits. When all you're used to is angers and fears and so on, it's hard to tell maybe what even confidence might be. But you can do that with the think, act, feel thing, okay? Think about what confidence might look like. If you're not real sure exactly what it is, see if you can find some examples of it and see how that person behaves that is confident. And when you got a good picture of what confidence might look like if you had it, act that way until you actually purchase that suit of clothes and it drops down and you wear it for a while and see if it fits. So this is another case where I don't actually have to know how to do confidence. I've gotten that a few times, like, how would I ever find confidence? I've never felt that way in my entire life, or very rarely. Well, that seems like a good method to me. Fake it. See if it shows up. And then you'll find out what it is like, and then you'll have some experience and you can go on from there. Okay. Any questions or comments on that? So the other thing that somebody asked to talk about was how the heck would I initiate without knowing how? I would recommend, personally, you do what makes sense to you, but I would recommend that you take something that you do already have a how for. So we don't have to get into the fear that always comes up when you don't know how to do something. Let's just bypass that one. That may be a little too rough. That's kind of the way it goes, isn't it? If you want to do something you don't know how, you kind of get afraid, don't you? Well, let's forget that for a second and just take something that you do know how to do and just try and experiment sometime. And be aware of your own how. I want to go to the store, something goofy and simple like that. You know how to go to the store, don't you? And look at how you know how to go to the store, so you're aware of it, and don't do it that way. You get it? Just set that aside. And initiate going to the store some other way than going and getting in the car and driving off to the store. Maybe go tell somebody you're going to go to the store. Or, I don't know, picture going to the store or something that would initiate it for you, and then just wait and see if you get to the store some other way than the way that you're used to. Something as silly as going to the store, it's probably a heck of a lot easier to just go get in the car, but this is an experiment. This is not to make it easy to go to the store. This is just to see if how will show up. That's one way I would do it. Is just be aware of my own how, and then stop thinking about it. Just, okay, I know how to do this, but I'm going to see if there's another way to do it. What says there's only one way to do everything in this world? Everything I've done, there's usually been 3 or 4 ways to do it. Huh? I just kind of picked the one that suits me best. It's not the right way to do it, it just suits me. Then maybe you can tackle something that you don't know how to do. And it's kind of the same on that one. So you watch the obstructions come up, the belief that you have to know how in order to do it, the fear, and so on, and just pick it up and set it aside. And say to X, this is what I want to do, and this is what's going on. Boy, I'm terrified because I don't know how to do it. That's part of what is. Always describe what is. The whole thing. There's a fear in doing something without knowing how. There's this going on. There's doubt. There's all these beliefs that I have to know how. We'll see. Now that you know what's going on, I'll sit here and I'll wait and we'll see what happens. And treat it as an experiment, okay? I don't know what the outcome will be. If nothing happens, well, okay, I don't know why, but I might get interested in finding out. If something does happen, that'll be interesting. Treat it as an experiment, okay? But the part that kind of works in all this is to describe everything that's going on. If you decide to set aside what you already know is how, then say that. This is what I'm doing. I'm initiating doing something when I already know how on purpose to see if there's another way of doing it. I mean, that's part of the description, is everything that's going on, not just the part that you think needs to be said. That's your job, to say all that is going on in this moment. Does that make sense? And I want to see what happens if I can get to the store without doing what's obvious to me. It's just curiosity. I want to find out what happens. Does that give you a start? Go ahead.
So the energy that you're putting in the direction of that aim would be to be reporting to X.
That's precisely right.
So
Isn't that
that's
a hoot?
initiating.
It really is.
Okay.
Always.
Because
In
we have
every-
to put out
In everything.
Yeah.
That's always the beginning of it.
That's
Everything.
the baby step in the direction.
Yep. Even if I know how to go to the store, the initiative starts when I tell X, go get in my car, I'm going to the store. And then when that starts turning into action, all that stuff about getting to the store is the initiative, isn't it? But always the beginning of it is determining the what and putting value on it. That part hasn't changed. Yes, sir.
Can you get a really big result without a really big second force?
You know, it's really odd, but I haven't seen any great correlation between the result and the second force. It's correlated to the initiative. More effort you put out, the first and, they're gone, I erased them, but first and second force, they would interact. So if I do some trivial little thing, but I put a ton of effort into getting it done, I get a lot of second force, even though the result may be fairly trivial. The interesting thing is that leaving the how left unsaid by the awareness, okay, often means that, from my point of view, there's not a whole lot of initiative, is there? Because part of doing that is saying, this is what, and I do really value this. And then just going around acting as if it is already done. Even though, of course, it hasn't happened yet. And that's about all the initiative there is. There's not a whole lot of second force that's necessary because there wasn't a whole lot of energy put into it in the first place. I suspect that all the rest of the initiative and the rest of the second force may happen in a place where I don't even see it. And yet that can create powerful results. I mean, we all know the famous example that Christ said that if you had the faith, you could say to that mountain, be uprooted and fall in the sea, and it would be so. Now, I think that would be kind of a spectacular result, don't you? Pretty kind of, that sounds like it would take a bit of energy to do. I'm not sure how that would get done, never having tried it. Boy, wouldn't that miff people, huh? I'm sorry, I was checking out to see if Christ was right. I misplaced error at. What can I say? That'd be a hoot, wouldn't it? Kind of make probably a little news sensation, but what's the initiative that would go into that, you see? So I don't know how much second force I'd really get to it, because most of the rest of the initiative and second force in the form of that, which I can't even imagine, like would it fly there? Would it just teleport? How would that occur? I don't know, not having done it. Really wouldn't have a whole lot to do with me, wouldn't it? So I don't know if I'd get the second. You see what I'm saying? So it's really hard to say that. Some things that we do, we put a lot of initiative into it, and normally what I've seen is we do get a lot of second force back for that. And some things we do, we don't put a lot in, and it's not always proportionate to the result, is it? It's weird. Sometimes just cleaning the house has been a difficult task because of circumstances. All these things kept coming up. You don't get to clean the house today. And that's not exactly a big thing. But sometimes it is. Any other questions or comments? Getting pretty close to flyaway time. I don't know why I run to show flying forward.
So what's the relation between form and result? What is the distinction between that?
Well, I kind of just said with that little thing about the mountain, like I don't know what the form would be. How would that, what would that look like? A mountain being uprooted and planted in the sea? I don't know. That's the form. I mean, I can kind of picture the beginning where the mountain's kind of put in a place where I sort of expect to find mountains, but then I can kind of picture it and see. I guess it kind of looked like an island now, wouldn't it? But what it would take to get from here to there, I don't know. And honestly, I'm not really sure I want to try that one because, you know, X is kind of a goofball. For all I know, he'd make some big earthquake and it'd fall over. That's the way he usually puts mountains in the sea from the last time I checked, wasn't it? And that's what they kind of tell me. So this is one I think I'll leave as a theory. That might be the form, couldn't it?
Right.
That would probably do it, wouldn't it? One heck of a big earthquake, and there you go. Sea all around that mountain. That's form. The way that it ends up expressing here physically, okay, that is the form. Getting to the grocery store, the form is the drive, isn't it? Artists, I'm sure, understand this. When you write a book or you write a song, I mean, the form is what you're doing when you write it, isn't it? I could be wrong, but I don't think the form is necessarily immediately obvious all the time, isn't it? Isn't that part of what you do is you get a concept of some kind, and then what you have to do is say, well, what form would make this thing live? So other people get kind of what I'm trying to express. That's part of it. Am I wrong, or?
You're right.
Sometimes the form is obvious, I suspect.
It's usually serendipitous.
Yeah. That's if you're gonna write a song or something. I mean, part of what it is you want to express something, isn't it? The form is very important to that. If you give it the wrong melody or something, if you want to express sadness and you have this melody that goes, I don't think anybody's going to get it.
People try.
But the result is what I.
Well, in a case like that, for me, again, this is theoretical to me. I thought we might understand it, so I could be wrong. And I got specialists in the house. I'm going to make an utter fool of myself. But for me, if I were doing that, that would be kind of what I would want to be the result. Is I would kind of hope that whatever I was feeling when I came up with this idea of a piece of music, you would feel something at least similar. Is that kind of part of what you're trying to do when you write a song? Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, that would be the result to me. If I want to entertain you, then you're actually entertained. If I want you to feel a certain way, you actually have feelings somewhat like that, okay? I can't do that without a form. Now, there is one that I do sort of understand, is entertain, all right? If I would like to entertain you and I stand up here sort of deadpan and talk about things you have utterly no interest in whatsoever, or I mistime every joke that I tell, that's the form, isn't it? I don't suppose I'm going to get the desired outcome, am I? You probably will be sort of booing me off the stage after a while, won't you? Because I don't have the form. I may have all the neat ideas about it all, but that's what you sort of work at when you're an entertainer, is getting the form down so you actually get that happening. And God knows we've all seen some comics who couldn't quite get that form down, haven't we? They're not too much fun.
What's the second force in that example?
Which one?
The one you just gave.
Entertaining?
Yeah.
Depends on all kinds of things. Stage fright has a lot to do with it, doesn't it? That's always a good second force from what I understand of actually getting up on a stage in front of, it's not so hard for me. I know you. I'm not particularly afraid that if I don't do it well, you'll hate me or whatever. So I don't get much stage fright, but I understand that comes up just about every time people perform, huh? That's a great second force to work with, I would think. I want to go out and entertain them, and something inside says, I want to run and tighten this car. Working with that second force probably gets you out there, and that's what I've heard from people who do this for a living, is that dealing with that fear actually gets them ready to do it. Isn't that a hoot?
I heard a quote from a famous classical musician, I forget which one, I think it's Sylvia. This lady said she never got stage fright, and he said, mad at me when I'm on.
There you go. I don't know that that's all of it, but that's the way you see second force. What is it that is resisting you doing this thing? Any other questions or comments? I suspect it's just about time to go. So it'd have to be, forget it, you're out of time. Okay, folks, we'll see you again.
Probably lose you about halfway down the street. Thank you.
Glad you came.
Me too.
This one in particular.
My thing is equipment. I mean, like, it comes to me, it's fine. Tone is always a problem. Tone is always a problem. But it's equipment failure that, I mean, I'll be in something or and a string will break and I'll only have one arm and I'll only have something where I have to turn it upside down and unscrew the